Mike, I knew I was going to speak to you for ages. I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And we said before we came on air, how long is this going to go for? And I said, well, yeah, half an hour, but I knew it wouldn't. So apologies, viewers. I probably have to do some editing. But I did promise, when I put out on the social medias that Councillor Ross was coming on the podcast, I asked for questions from local constituents and businesses and said, look, what are you going to ask the leader of the council? So that's what we've got. So if you could, you can give me 5 minutes.
That's fine.
We'll go through. Okay.
Well, maybe we'll be a bit quicker.
Yeah, just quick one word. No, some of these you might not be able to do. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, so first question. What innovations, early years projects or funded incentives could Mike establish in the Hull and East Riding as part of the mayoral combined authority to drive up levels of literacy, digital skills and employability to provide a legacy of aspiration in the region? So those early years projects, developing skills, particularly in digital, particularly in literacy, what more can we do to kind of really intervene in those early stages?
So one of the exciting things about devolution is that the mayoral combined authority will take on responsibility for certainly adult skills and like in this region, and that gives us that opportunity. And you may notice I've used the word opportunity several times, and that's intentional. It's deliberate, because a lot of this is very much at the formative stage. It's not at here's the project, off we go and run with it. Yeah. But this is an area where over time there will be change on the ground. So at the moment, the process is around taking it on and actually holding together what's there, but in time developing new. And what's outlined in that question, sort of things that needs to happen, working alongside certainly the excellent providers we have in the system here already, and I won't name them because if I name them, I'm going to miss one out and offend someone, so I won't name them. But we know there's some excellent providers in this region, and the combined authority needs to work alongside those, and also importantly work alongside the business community to know what skills are needed in the next 6 months, 18 months, 3 years, so that those skills can be provided, so that they get the workforce coming through that they need. Yeah.
And just generally, I feel there's a lack of aspiration in the city. I do feel that across just generally, people just feel a little bit kind of fatigued and what's the opportunity for me, and like is anything ever going to get any better for anything? Do you sense that, or do you just sense opportunity? You just think no, everything's great. Like how do you generally feel?
So it's really interesting, because I said before about how I'm got to be positive about the future, which is ironic because I'm not naturally a positive person. I'm naturally quite a pessimist. That's probably why I'm a Liberal Democrat. But I think there is something around we need as a city to be more optimistic. I think that's very true. It's really interesting. This is a place that historically has always just got on and done it, regardless of the situation it's faced. And that's great. I think I applaud that mentality. But having that sort of, and I always say we shouldn't try and ape the likes of Manchester and Leeds and places like that, but we should set out the distinctive things that are of this place and make more of them. And there has to be a way of doing that is positive for the region, that gives people that aspiration, that demonstrates actually what we have now is great, but this is what we could be and how we work towards doing that. Yeah. And so I would never speak badly or talk down to the people that are here. I do think we need to be more positive as a region in terms of what could happen. Yeah,
I think we need aspiration and positivity. I think there's lots of elements to that. There's certainly around equality, poverty, health is a big thing in this region. There's lots of things that we need to kind of address.
And those challenges you set out there, health and poverty and equality, are disproportionately worse here as well. So the response has to be disproportionate to what it is elsewhere as well, in my book. Yeah.
Okay, on to a very different subject. So infrastructure, roads in the city. There's no doubt that Hull is having a lot of problems with roads. I mean, anyone who's driving about, I'm a driver, I see it every day. You can't get away from it. There are problems happening. Now, you've got to sort of break eggs to make omelettes, so that work has to be done. I accept that. But just in terms of who's responsible for it? Is it the council? Is it highways? Like, who's responsible for the way the city moves?
I mean, it depends which road. That's you have to say. For example, A63 was always a Highways England scheme, National Highways as was, and that's a big scheme that's having a big impact on the city. The roads within the city are more council responsibility. Had a complication now with the mayoral devolution in place. There's something called the Key Route Network, which is not every road, but certainly the major roads is now a mayoral responsibility, or will be with time. And so, it gets complicated in terms of assessing who is responsible for what. It can be made to work, and we will make it work. What I'd say on this is very conscious that when we took office 2022, highways was a big issue then. We did a lot of work then. We did the major highways infrastructure survey. That led to changes that we've taken place since. We want more change to come, but really important for us that those changes are grounded in the views of the local population, and that, I almost said that's what drives us. That would be a really, really inappropriate.
Oh, lovely.
So I won't say that, but
Lovely.
that is what motivates us to make sure that actually, we know what we hear what public want to happen, and we can work to try and make.
Do you know when you're sequencing things though? So I'm being really nerdy and specific on this, but just thinking about like traffic lights and things like that. So specifically in this question, he says, who decides how the sequence is run? There's so many sets of lights in Hull, particularly in our area where we live, where the sequences cause massive tailbacks and it makes no sense. Particularly where you're around train lines and things like that. Yeah. But you'll have a whole set of traffic sat there at a red light with all the other areas closed, nobody's moving, and this traffic could be flowing. Who's deciding that?
I won't deny that sometimes I'm sat at a place I think, why is these lights not... Anyway, you want them to be responsive to live traffic as well. I think that's a really big thing for me. So on the most part, it's going to be the traffic engineers at the council in terms of the network around Hull. And so, but I'm not going to pretend they're not constantly assessing it. This is something that they are live to, and work can take place there. And I think if people have suggestions around where they can be improved, then I think the council would be happy to hear from them. Yeah. What I'd also say, and I'll use the word sequencing to hang a hook on here, is around sequencing of roadworks is another thing that people often say, like, why got all these roadworks happening at the same time? I think a couple of things on this. One, it's important to recognise actually not all the roadworks of the council, sometimes it is utility companies and and that has an impact. And particularly then, if you play in, and this city is particularly prone to this problem around burst water mains. The number of burst water mains the last few years has been
recently
horrific.
Down my area.
Indeed. And so the impact of that has just been a problem as well. So laying in the emergency works on top of the plan works. But the reason I raise this is around one of the things we have done as administration, that's just try and push back as much as possible on some of those external works, so they can be programmed and done in a manner that causes the least disruption as possible. And I'm not going to pretend that there isn't still disruption. Of course there is, but actually, if all the schemes are happening when outside organisations ask for them, well, forget trying to move around the car, because it wouldn't happen.
Do you know what it is? Because I'm talking about traffic and traffic lights, and of course that's it's not that it's not an important issue to people. It certainly is. But I suppose the bigger point is that kind of sense of it's like that common sense thing. Do you know, where you're sat there as the person, you go, who put this together? This makes absolutely no... It's that sort of feeling. And I suppose that's again that break from the councils.
So
do you know what I mean?
I'm an elected official. I'm not a roads traffic engineer, so I'm not going to pretend to understand how it works at infinite level. Okay. But I'm sure there will be reasons.
It's been raised. I've raised it. Okay. What's his views on the ludicrous, artificially tight Hull boundary that puts a city's suburbs outside of the city? This might wind up East Riding dwellers, but it's an age-old debate. It goes on and on and on. But surely this is crucial to the success of the city, especially now we've got a combined mayoral thing in place.
Well, I mean, this is one of those issues that if you want to lose a loads of friends, then you take a particular view. So this is where it kind of helps that I'm not from the city, so I don't have that historic sort of history on it. But I recognise the issue completely, and at the same time, I do understand the impact that it has had in terms of if we were sat in Leeds, the likes of Wetherby technically count as part of Leeds council area. You cross the road on Bricknell Avenue, one side of it is home, one side is riding. I think they both look the same. So I completely understand the point that's being made by that question. I guess the important thing actually is, because I think we need to recognise that it's probably not going to change anytime soon. The important thing is how you make it work, though, for the region. And actually, where your question ended up around the Mayoral Combined Authority is an example of how we can try and make it work despite those issues. And if you look at working as a region, you can still unlock the stuff that you need to get. And one of the things, for example, where this is an impact is the city centre and retail impact, because the retail trade numbers don't work to our advantage. The spend money of the business riding heads towards York in terms of the technical factors that looked at York and Leeds and so on. So we lose out that potential investment from big businesses want to come in and find new places. So we need to find ways around that so we don't lose out.
Yeah. It's just nuts, isn't it? I mean, I know you can't really get into the comments on it, but I'm speaking as a constituent, and I'm saying it's crazy. Yeah. The silliest little things where you kind of have your Hull City Council leisure centres, your East Riding leisure centres. One card should cover both, because then you're giving more opportunity to more people to go to the right places. And it's ridiculous that you say you go this far down the road and you're in a different county. It just makes... And I accept that we're not going to change it anytime soon because there's lots of politics in it. But surely there's much more collaboration.
The question says, why don't I be surviving West? Like, if you were in the Kellers or whatever, someone, I think a lot of those people do see themselves as living in East Riding. So there is that issue to it. But I completely get, like, it does, from the face of it, look a bit odd that you go down one street and suddenly in a different place where it looks exactly the same.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, great, we're moving on. Pan-Humber collaborations. How will we work across sectors to maximise the full opportunity for investment and job creation?
Well, so the Pan-Humber issue is one that actually does interest me quite a bit, having gone through this devolution process, because it's obviously notable that we didn't get a Pan-Humber mail model. We had a North Bank and a South Bank, and I think there's lots of reasons for that. You know, if you look to the South Bank, the outlook that the councils there had was much more south towards Lincolnshire than it was towards North Bank, and that's why they went down the Greater Lincolnshire model. But I also recognise there is a Humber economic area, and so it's important that business is supported to make that work. Now, when devolution was agreed here, one of the things that they did, they specified that there has to be Pan-Humber working. I think it's fair to say that with the two mayors we've got now, we're not quite sure what that means in terms of how that's going to work. But I think from a council level, certainly we'll want to continue working with our colleagues on the South Bank and actually recognise that there is a Humber geography, and that as much say people look at the Hay region, Huntley Yorkshire, and some will look at Greater Lincolnshire, for some they need an even bigger area to be operating out of when it talks about really big business. And so we'll need to make sure that they're able to access this region.
I suppose is there a danger it becoming sort of very almost piecemeal, you know? So you kind of you've got your little authorities, your little bits, and it's like everyone's fighting for their kind of thing. And to your point, you know, to the rest of the country or even internationally, you kind of need a zone. You know, that area is like the region.
And it's really interesting because I've seen presentations before where it talks about the Humber, and actually the Humber itself is really hard to define what that is. Now, if you're in Manchester, you know where Manchester is. If you're in London, you know what London is. Birmingham, you know Birmingham's there. One of our big challenges we have as City of Hull and this region is that the first challenge is people actually know where it is. And that is so. I think definition is helpful. But essentially, that's what just comes down to all of us here shouting loudly about what we are and what we can do. Well,
it leads on nicely to the next question. You probably know this has come from by the wording. Embedding of place brand values. With city plans afoot, how is Mike ensuring the city's regeneration, example, the East Bank Urban Village, lives up to the values that we've developed? Revolutionary, resourceful, real, remarkable. You know that's future Humber, don't you? Of course it is. And they want to get those values out, and absolutely right. Go Diane and team. But how are we doing that? How are we embedding the values?
So I think I talked before around brand when it came to maritime and film and so on. And I think brand is really important. I think being able to define place is really important. So I think on how the council is part of that process, the council needs to be clear about what it is, but ultimately about what the city is. And the council is not the city and the city is not the council, but there's undoubtedly a very close relationship between the two. And as a council, we need to be a place leader. We need to be a place maker. And so taking on those values there, you know, it's been recognised that those are values for this region. As a council, we are aligned to those values. And so when it comes to new developments, we're saying, look, this is what this place is about. And so we want people to work with us that recognise those values, understand those values, and embed those values in what they do.
Is the council revolutionary, resourceful, real, remarkable, would you say?
I'm
teasing a bit here, but
I appreciate it. But to accept, but it's what I would say on the revolutionary thing for the council is that, or revolutionary point rather, the council's a big beast. The council, despite the change that has been made to local government over the years, the council still is there. We talk about turning the oil tank around, and you know we've been in administration now for a few years. We have made change, and I'm pleased with what we've done, but there's still a lot more change to make. And it's doing that change in an organisation size of the council is probably much more evolutionary than revolutionary, but certainly where we want to get to should be revolutionary change.
Okay. Last couple. Building relationships with key investors, example, Japan, China, maximising civic, cultural and education relationships. to pave the way for strong economic relations. Are we building those relationships with key investments of those huge economic regions and countries like China?
Yeah, so the council has set out its sights on an international level. We, from time to time, host visits from trade delegations from elsewhere. Some of those places you mentioned there are sort of places that we've had links with. And so for me, you want a strategy to it that works for the place and works for the city. And you don't want it to be so scattergun that you're almost going for every opportunity and getting none. But I do want us to be an outward-looking city that recognises that we're part of a bigger system and gets those opportunities to see investment coming from those places. Because whether it's the likes of Japan that you mentioned, I would have said maybe 6 months ago, the USA, it's a bit harder now.
Yeah.
We need to recognise that actually we benefit as a place if we bring in people from elsewhere as well.
Yeah, and I think it's establishing what's what's our thing almost, and then really powering that through, and then people seeing the opportunity.
And quite I think it's two-way in the sense that yes, obviously the places that are coming here to invest get benefit, but also the opportunities and benefits that people who are here already in terms of trading for elsewhere or cultural experience, or all sides that that we benefit from that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, investing in growth for SMEs. There's a lot of stuff that we have here. We have the Growth Hub and skills boot camps and all that kind of stuff. How do you see sort of the SME sector for the region? Is there more focus on this, trying to grow this, do more with this? I would say a lot of smaller businesses are really feeling hard done to. Not particularly because of the council as such, but just generally across
National
the board.
policy,
It's quite hard work.
No, that's it. It is. I said before, I was positive about the economic future despite the economic circumstances.
Yeah.
I think it's that difference between in the moment and the long term. And
Sure.
I think in the moment it is really tough out there, and I recognise that.
Yeah.
And that is down to a variety of reasons. And I sort of smiled slightly when you talked about SME, because I was in a meeting last week and someone said they don't like the phrase SME, and I kind of got what they meant. Said particularly in a place like this where actually you talk about micro businesses.
It's micros, yeah.
A lot of the businesses here are micro businesses
Yeah.
rather than employers of 250 people. And I think we need to recognise that this is a region that has a lot of those smaller scale businesses, and it's what makes it a great place. I think I would talk around the need for collaboration being key here. People needing to work alongside and with others to benefit themselves and benefit the other parties. The positive around that is this is a place like I love spending time with people in the business community in this city, in this region, because actually it is actually, I think, I'm not saying it's not economic competition in certain sections of it, but it is a particularly collaborative place where people do want to support each other and get things done. I hear stories where other places where it's much more cutthroat, and actually that is not the style here. People want to support each other and because they recognise if they grow, we all grow and we all benefit from it.
Yeah, and we need that, don't we? There is that togetherness thing, which kind of ties in nicely to politics.
Well, and we've got some great organisations to help with that respect, breaking my rule I mentioned earlier, but the likes of the FEO and the CBI and the FSB and the Chamber and all the different organisations, and apologies Jenny I missed, but like that sense of those different business groups that want to work with others to get stuff done.
I think the other thing is, there's lots of hubs and things and all, business hubs, and I won't name any of them because then I'll do the same thing as you. But actually there is this need to kind of get this collaboration across them, and I'm sort of sensing that they're trying to do that more. Because they're sensing like the isolation, kind of each kind of having their own pot. That's not really what we're about. We need this unification, and as you say, if one rises, all rise, and that's kind of what we need to get. And I think Hull's always had that. It's always been very community, isn't it? We are a very community city, and despite all the challenges we face, we always kind of push through. We're quite hard-headed in that sort of sense.
It's that kind of it's almost an attitude of we'll just go and do it.
We'll just do it anyway.
We'll do it anyway, and which is great, and I applaud it.
Yeah,
I just want more for the place as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, final one: full integration of education with industry. So there's a lot of discussion around being able to deliver growth without developing the skills that we need to do that, and how can we act differently and collaboratively, to that word, to ensure that we don't miss this opportunity. Is there enough opportunity to develop the skills, understand what's happening in industries, and harness the talents and bring the industry here, so people can have a good life, a good job, a good career?
I think there's a real moment we have now to seize that, and it's incumbent on all of us involved in this to make sure that happens. And yes, by that I mean the likes of myself and our new mayor and the councils, but I mean industry as well. I mean the business sector and the skills providers, because through the male combined devolution model, taking on that responsibility locally is really, really key to success for this region, and doing it in a way that sees those different elements lined up and have a unified approach to doing so, so that the skills sector knows the needs of the business sector knows how the skills world works, the council's there to support and facilitate that alongside the combined authority. And so I'm not going to pretend it's easy, I'm not going to say we've got it sorted, but there's a real moment now to make that happen. And so my message to everybody involved is let's work together to do that.
Yeah, it's a very positive ending. Councillor Mike Ross, you've been so generous with your time, and I knew this was going to go on, so I'm sorry for that, but thank you for coming on for the second time. Pleasure. And giving your viewpoint of what's going on. Overall, it all sounds, you're positive. You're positive about the region. Look, we've got devolution. You wanted that. We have a mayor in place. You're the leader of the council. Hopefully you can work together and achieve good things, which is kind of what you ultimately want to do. And your overall message to listeners for the region is kind of keep your chin up, and we are going to move forward. You're very positive about that, aren't you?
Yeah, it's work with us. Yeah, there's a real moment now. Let's all pull together to get in the right place.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on. Cheers.